So, good afternoon again. I hope you had a good coffee break, lunch break, and sessions. We now will turn to part three uh, of the discussions under sub-item 4C, which is on the coordination of the PCCB network post uh, its pilot phase. The related background document is PCCB slash 2023 slash 6. The PCCB is invited to consider the background note on the findings from the pilot phase evaluation report of the PCCB network and agree on working modalities for its coordination and next steps post its pilot phase. To set the context for our new members and the observers in the room, the pilot phase of the PCCB network, which occurred from March 2020 to December 2021, was guided by an internal task force. An evaluation report was later launched, and the PCCB network was subsequently integrated into the activities of Working Group 3. I will now start by sharing the key findings and recommendations contained in the annex of the Note C to inform our actions. The evaluation report highlights the importance of prioritizing PCCB network activities that closely align with the 2021-2024 work plan of the PCCB. This alignment ensures a strong connection between our activities and the expected results. A notable finding is the positive impact of adopting a participatory and member-led approach to network activities. This approach strengthens ownership among our members, fostering a sense of responsibility and commitment. During the pilot phase, an encouraging 77% of PCCB network members actively engaged in various activities. However, since some members are not consistently engaging over time, it would be assess member retention rates to promote long-term engagement and ensuring sustained commitment. The evaluation also suggests enhancing inclusivity by creating and distributing content in multiple languages. Additionally, it recommends encouraging meetups and exchanges to bridge linguistic gaps and enable effective participation of all members. It is recommended to continue to leverage the PCCB network members' expertise through the PCCB thematic dialogue series at UNFCCC's Regional Climate Weeks. This approach allows us to tap into regional knowledge and foster interregional collaborations among members. The background document proposes considering the organization of flagship events at each capacity building hub during the COPs. These events would provide visibility, facilitate face-to-face networking, and encourage knowledge sharing among members of the PCCB network. To ensure accountability and measure progress, the document emphasizes the importance of maintaining ongoing monitoring and evaluation processes. These processes will enable us to assess the progress made and report on the implementation of the activities of the PCCB network. I would now like to invite my fellow PCCB members and observers to a plenary discussion on the modalities for coordination and next steps of the PCCB network to post its pilot phase. On the screen, you see a number of guiding questions for our discussion, but you are also welcome to ask further questions and raise any other issues too. So the questions are, how could the findings from the pilot phase evaluation report of the PCCB network inform the next steps to enhance the effectiveness and impact of the network during the post-pilot phase? Discuss the organization of an annual flagship in-person PCCB network event at the capacity building hubs. I would like to now open the floor first to the PCCB members and then also to our meeting observers. So the floor is open for the members to react.
just to break the ice. Thank you very much, Rosibel, and thank you also for the presentation and the recap of the evaluation of the PCCB network, which I think we mentioned already several times already yesterday as an effective, really an effective way to engage with practitioners, with stakeholders, and really for the benefit of capacity building efforts. We learned that PCCB network members contributed to the translations to the toolkit, so it's really an active collaboration. So in particular, and thinking that one constraint for some members to join the event at COP could be the accreditation, because the PCCB network is open to any organization or entity dealing with capacity building on climate change, therefore might not be a registered observer, so could not have the chance to take part in a COP. So knowing that already also last year at the Capacity Building Hub we had interactive events with people from so connected virtually to the session, to have this again, allowing more members, so in order to really let them feel part of the network and to be able to contribute to the work of the PCCB even at COPs. So, and of course also identifying those member organizations who are also observers and therefore able to attend the COP and the Capacity Building Hub. So this would be my suggestion for the in-person event at the Capacity Building Hub. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I first want to recognize and commend the PCCB and all stakeholders and participants for their participation in the PCCB network. The evaluation report has highlighted the significance and relevance of the network in strengthening collaborative capacity building efforts. With that said, I would like to encourage us to approach the post-pilot phase with innovation and remind us to let equity underpin our strategies and activities. And this is especially needed to address the access and linguistic barriers, as well as to allow us to achieve that high impact that we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Is there other of the members that want to react? Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Co-Chair. Many of the aspects I wanted to raise were already discussed with Roberta and Kayo. I think one other aspect that I wanted to flag that I think we really need to consider moving forward in terms of our next steps, which is something that came up strongly in our discussions yesterday, is the aspect of the evaluation report that speaks about the level or the underperformance as it relates to communication and outreach activities. I think it reinforces the discussions we've been having thus far, and therefore we need to consider exploring modalities to ensure that we can increase that output in terms of communications and outreach. So I just wanted to flag that as a really important aspect moving forward in response to question 1 in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Carisha. We take note of that. Any other members? If not, the floor is open for observers who want to take the floor. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I joined the capacity building quite late, but at least from what I've gathered so far, and what I was able to read, what I would like to contribute in terms of the questions, guiding questions, is that it would be good to kind of understand the various stakeholders involved. A lot of points have already been raised with regards to participation, which is limited because of funding. But then again, if those people who are still not able to make it are able to be understood in terms of what projects they are working on, and if that is mapped out, that way we can see what has been done and what needs to be done, and then we can kind of know where to channel the funds into. And if such a system exists, then it could be also it can be made transparent and such that references can be made to it. I don't know if that makes sense in terms of the post-pilot phase. And yeah, the in-person participation is mostly as a lot of people don't get either funding or they don't get the accreditation. So that's what I just wanted to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. We will take note with the secretariat and reach out. I don't know.
No, for me, thank you. No, thank you very much. I'm not sure if I. So you would like the PCCB to focus in the context of the event to be held on the PCCB network at the capacity building up to address also the issue of funding for so that organizations may have in joining the PCCB activities or in delivering capacity building?
Both, actually, joining and delivering capacity building. But I'm sure yourselves must have discussed delivering capacity building yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, thank you very much. Just so to understand better, because as you know, the PCCB itself does not have a budget. It's not delivering capacity building, it's enhancing coherence and coordination. So, of course, including discussions on how to improve the fundings, how to improve access to funding. So, I don't know if it would be directly addressed in the PCCB network event, post the evaluation of the network and post the evaluation of the activities carried out during its work, but for sure during the capacity building hub days there will be also this kind of topic addressed. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Roberta. Is Kun-san.
Yeah, thank you very much. I, of course, don't have to repeat, and I agree with all my colleagues here, appreciating the work and especially finding and recommendation. Only wanted to recognize one important highlight is that the activities that are under the technical exchanges and peer learning activity pillar perform exceptionally well. So I thought that's amazing. You know, it's something that we wanted to see with 40% of activity exceeding expectations. So that's great, right? So just wanted to highlight that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So thank you, Kun-san. Here, Deb, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Number 8 on the report, which talks about the increased visibility through flagship event. I just wanted to highlight that. and really think about how to do that in partnership, as one of the previous speakers talked about. I think it could be extremely beneficial to work with different partners to provide funding into the event to increase the participation and networking, which we know can increase capacity more broadly. And then maybe one last thing on that flagship event as you start to conceptualize what that might be. I have loved the Capacity Hub and just how many incredible connections and thinking it gets shared in that event. But one of the ways to really amplify a flagship event would be to make it highly recommended, if not required, that if you have a space in any of the days across the Capacity Hub, that you attend the flagship event as well. That's sort of a highly encouraged consideration, because there is so much synergy between the days. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. We'll take note to that. So, okay.
Yes, Cecile again from GIZ. As one of the members of the PCCB network, I think that the annual flagship in-person event is also really important for the networking, in fact. And I think that it could be how do you say, like accompanied in a way that there's a mechanism where capacity, like providers of capacity building, are actually like put maybe in smaller groups with certain receivers. There could also be like thematic breakout groups, rather than just having a pure networking event where sometimes you don't really know who to talk to and who's who, and yeah, just to break it up a little bit into smaller parts, maybe with a more open part at the end of it. So I think that would be really, really beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think also my name is Renit Laishimie. I think there is also insufficient use of digital technologies and the insufficient funds to facilitate virtual and physical participation. And we would like to advise that UNFCCC or PCCB can advise UN agencies and other who can do so to support institutions and private as individual or centers and the association to participate, so that it can be an investment in the time of climate. Because in our local area we have problem of connectivity, and if you want to connectivity, you have to pay airtimes, or have some don't have smartphone or computers. So I better to help some countries, in developing countries.
Thank you, Renilde. We take note of that, and that's something important that you have mentioned. Dr. Greg.
Greg Walker from Mediators Beyond Borders and Oregon State University. I'm going to propose perhaps a very crazy idea. For many years, when I would go to the COPs and we would have our day off in the middle, I attended what was called Forest Day. And then it became Global Landscapes Day. And hundreds of us would give up our day off to go. Now imagine on the day off, or the 8th day, because we want to respect the customs and traditions of our host country, we had a capacity building field trip, but not led by the PCCB, but led by members of the network. So all of you with the Secretariat or members of the committee could take a day off if you wanted. We would not expect you to be there. You might need the break. But imagine if we had some kind of a field trip that looked at a capacity building related project in that host country, in that host city, perhaps accompanied by a nice box lunch. A small registration fee. We got on buses, we went to the site, we networked with each other. We've all been to conferences that will include some kind of a field trip, and there's some appeal to it. But let me emphasize, I don't think if the PCCB decided to try this, I don't think you have to accept responsibility, either the Secretariat or the committee. We have so many members of the network, you could put out a call and say, who among the network would be willing to organize this, to lead it? I think we'd get a good response. So there's my crazy idea. Thanks for considering it.
Dr. Greg, thank you. I don't think your ideas are crazy. I think they're very innovative and well received. I don't know, Roberta, if you wanted to.
No, absolutely a good idea.
Yes.
And well, I won't commit now to be there, but in principle, I would like to join. I remember, when was it, in COP22 in Marrakesh, there was a training on climate law organized in a university just outside the venue, and I went. It was very interesting, so that I think it would really be a good idea. Thank you.
So thank you. Anybody wants to request the floor? Or maybe we can move on? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm from the Philippines. Thank you very much, co-facilitators. For bullet 1, capacity building should be needs-based, as determined through a tool, then monitoring, evaluation, and of course, reporting. It should be evidence-based through the use of available science, including, of course, indigenous and local knowledge. And it should also be sustainable and inclusive, yet targeted to specific actors. That's for bullet 1. Thank you.
Yeah, we welcome your feedback, and of course, we are willing to discuss it, and the secretary is taking note. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So with that all said, then we should conclude this part of this session, and now we go ahead and invite our meeting observers to send us any further comments on this sub-item via our in-meeting survey on SurveyMonkey as soon as possible, so that the committee can react to them either later in the meeting, if there's time, or after the meeting. And there's, of course, again, the link of the survey projected in the screen. So now we're moving on to the regional, part 4 of Regional Climate Weeks, the organization of the Regional Thematic Dialogues of the FARS Committee on Capacity Building for 2023. This is the fourth part of the discussion today under sub-item 4C about planning of the PCCB Regional Event Series to be held during the 2023 Regional Climate Weeks, to be started this September. The PCCB is invited to consider the background note containing the draft concept for the PCCB Regional Thematic Dialogues in 2023 and agree on the next steps with regard to the planning and organization of the dialogues. The related background document is PCCB/2023/7. I would like to highlight the key detail regarding the upcoming regional thematic dialogues of the PCCB in 2023. Okay. These dialogues scheduled to be held in conjunction with the UNFCCC Regional Climate Weeks. The regions and corresponding days are as follows. Africa Climate Week in Nairobi, Kenya, from 4th to 8th of September. Middle East and North Africa Climate Week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, from 9th to 12th of October. Latin American Caribbean Climate Week in Panama City, in Panama, from the 23rd to the 27th of October, and the Asia Pacific Climate Week in Johor, Malaysia, date to be confirmed still. In line with the 2023 PCCB focus area, capacity building support for adaptation with a focus on addressing gaps and needs related to the formulating and implementing national adaptation plans, the regional thematic dialogues of this year will focus on the overarching theme of capacity building support for NAPS. Drawing upon the synthesis of submission on the 2023 PCCB focus area, we have identified priority capacity building areas that could serve as sub-themes for the dialogues. These areas include accessing financial support for NAPS, institutional arrangements and coordination on NAPS, implementation strategies for NAPS, risk and vulnerability assessment and risk management in the context of NAPS, including alignment of NAPS and disaster risk reduction, climate scenarios, science and translation to local context, gender equality, integration, and social inclusion, including the participation of civil society, communities, and vulnerable groups in NAP processes. I would like now to invite my fellow PCCB members and observers to a plenary discussion on the organization of the 2023 PCCB Regional Thematic Dialogues of the UNFCCC Regional Climate Weeks. On the screen, you see a guiding questions for our discussion, but please feel free to ask further questions and raise any other issues. So the questions we see are, under the overarching theme of capacity building for NAPS and taking into account the region-specific context, which sub-themes could be addressed at each or all regional thematic dialogue? And I open the floor first for the PCCB members, colleagues, and then also to our meeting observers. And we look forward to hearing from your views and suggestions from all. Roberta, please.
Thank you very much, Rosibel. And well, indeed, it's a very important activity. The panels of the PCCB at the regional climate weeks is really the chance to get closer also to members of the network who cannot join COPs and have even virtually, and so to as members to deal with this activity. Well, first of all, I would task the working group 3, the one on communication and raising awareness, to take the lead in organizing together, of course, with the secretariat team, the panels, and taking possibly advantage of our members from the region, from the area where the regional climate week will take place, and as specific topics, given the overarching theme, capacity building for NAPS, and taking into account the region-specific context, I would refer to the findings of the submissions, also because they are like first-hand issues raised by parties and organizations on the specific gaps and needs they have when designing and implementing NAP. So I would draw from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Any other of the members would like to react? Ms. Farr.
Yeah, I agree. Good afternoon, everyone. I think the issue on NAPs, because most of the countries are now developing the NAPs. So I think it's very important to have this focus on development of NAPs. And what I would suggest is we need to circulate the information as early as possible. Because if we're talking of, like, let's say in Nairobi, East Africa, I think most of the East African countries would like to participate because it's in Nairobi. So I would suggest that each and every one of us should circulate the information widely so that we can get a lot of audience during this climate week in those countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Farhan. Is anybody else? Mr. Alejandro, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rosibel. Just wanted to add a couple of points, maybe to provide a bit more information on the regional climate weeks, because I'm in the Secretariat. I'm also dealing directly with the organization of the regional climate weeks. So this year, the events will be, all activities during the regional climate weeks will be under the framework of contributing to the global stocktake in terms of solution-oriented discussions, aiming at providing inputs, contributions, on the main findings of the global stocktake. And that's what the timing is after September, because now we're concluding here the technical dialogue process of the global stocktake, and we will have already some findings by the start of the regional climate week. So besides the fact that for the PCCB, they will be organized, of course, under the focus area, maybe it's important to bear in mind that how can this could also be framed in the context of solutions on capacity building in the context of the global stocktake, because the outcomes of the regional climate weeks will be reports, comprehensive reports on the discussions that will also be presented by the host of the regional climate weeks to the COP, to the presidency. So just wanted to mention that, and also the fact that, as Roberta mentioned, the participation of PCCB members, I think, has been proven very useful during regional climate weeks, not only for the event itself, the PCCB event, but rather for connecting with regional stakeholders. And maybe we heard this morning about the importance of better promoting the PCCB, and I think maybe through regional climate weeks is also a good opportunity for informing, promoting the work of the PCCB. In that sense, maybe part of the promotion would be to have PCCB members engage in other activities during Regional Climate Week, be it as panelists or resource persons in other events, and we're happy to facilitate that. In that sense, we can also consider options for mobilizing the participation of PCCB members in the corresponding regions, because, of course, doesn't mean that because a PCCB member is part of a region, it's easy to travel to that host country, for example. Well, okay, Rosibel, Honduras, and Panama are very close, but for other regions, it's more complicated. So we're willing to consider the possibility of how to mobilize support for the participation of PCCB members. We've done it in the past, and we're willing to consider that again. Thank you.
For that valuable information, please go ahead.
Not directly reacting to that, but more going into the question here that is posed to us for the sub-teams, for the different areas that were shown on the previous slides. Just out of the Durban forum that we had last week, suggesting that there's under the Area B, institutional arrangements and coordination on NAPs, dedicated sub-theme around how the connection is made at the national level between the NAPs and other policies, such as the NDCs, for example, but also the national development plans. That was one of the main takeaways that at least I personally took from the Durban forum. In the sub-area C, it's a bit different here. Okay, so that was basically under A. I took it from the document that was circulated. For the implementation strategies, in the breakout group that we had on that, the importance of also having a session on capacity building about how allocate, well, first estimate and then allocate a budget for the different activities under the NAP. And then maybe the last point about the risk and vulnerability assessments. There's assessments that were made by GIZ that are more comprehensive, but then there's also shorter assessments that can be made and that I think can be maybe more, let's say, a pragmatic approach and allow to go a bit quicker to the development of the NAP. That's it for me in terms of suggestion of sub-themes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback. We take note of that. Still requests for the... Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, again, a very interesting topic about the sub-themes that should be suggested for NAPs. And in terms of we've been highlighting for Yongo, as well as the organizations I present, as well as the university, what comes up very strongly is something to do with food security and data insecurity, in the sense that there's a whole lot on, the risks have been assessed for, that's just a something for food. Okay, there's a system, this is how it's going to run, but there's always lack of data. So that's why I said data insecurity. So that could be some sort of regional sub-theme, if that makes sense. So food security and data insecurity has come out strongly. Then in terms of gender equality, integration, and social inclusion, I strongly advocate for participation more widely, because I feel like it's kind of a bit hindered. I haven't really had so much on how the PCCB is promoting gender equality, integration, and social inclusion. So, but I'm happy to also feedback on this particular theme for more sub-themes. Thank you.
No, absolutely. About the gender and social inclusion as a also cross-cutting theme to be addressed, it is always important for the PCCB. So as a topic, it is addressed during the capacity building hub, as well as also in the regional week. So thank you very much for recalling that.
Okay, so if there are no other requests from the floor, we take note and we continue. Go ahead, Miss from the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Okay, for the question of part 4, please let us also consider the important role of the national, subnational governments, the role of academia, of course, the local government units, the role of academia, the role of the non-state actors, like the civil society organizations, people's organizations, of course, the NGOs, capacity building for sustainable development, enhancing capacity of national focal points, and building communities of practice to subnational levels. And I just would like to highlight the leadership and governance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. Okay, I think we have concluded this discussion, so we're going to now to the next slide.
Yes, so on the screen you will see now a new set of guiding questions for our discussion. But again, please feel free to ask further questions and raise any other issues too. And the questions are, based on the overall theme of the regional dialogues, capacity building for NAPs, and any agreed sub-themes for the different events, which regional stakeholders could the PCCB engage with in each region? And how could the findings from the regional level best be presented and discussed at the fifth capacity building hub to ensure regional findings and solutions reflected in a shape that debates at the global level? And first, again, I open the floor to the PCCB members, and later we can do it for observers. Roberta, please.
Sorry, I'm always the first, the quickest raising the flag. Well, no, to respond to the first question, I was thinking we could combine two intervention received, because, for example, gender equality integration as well as and social inclusion could be even one of the sub-theme or one of the subtopic, and as well as other also funding channels for funding access to for NAPS and as stakeholders, absolutely also from academia and the NGO, the stakeholders just mentioned during the previous intervention can be targeted at regional level to attend and fruitfully contribute to the events at the Climate Weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Still have the floor for PCCB members. Okay, so now we open the floor for observers. If you have any thoughts and comments. Oh, did you? Yeah, Mr. I forget. Richard.
Yeah, thank you so much for Madam Co-Chair for giving me the floor to provide my reflection. From the outset, let me say that this year's Climate Week, particularly for the African region, is a very unique one. Unique in the sense that the government of the Republic of Kenya is hosting also the Climate Summit. So with that in mind, I would like that maybe we take advantage in terms of the elevation of this particular Climate Week, where we are going to have several heads of states coming from different countries to attend the Climate Summit, which will be held in collaboration with the Climate Week. So looking at the aspects that are very key when it comes to the NAP, and I would totally agree with my colleagues that maybe financing for NAPs will be one of the crucial topics that maybe we could actually explore in terms of how do we get some views on how the gap on financing could be bridged, and also based on the availability of many stakeholders at the summit, I would prefer that also we look at the possibility of broadening our engagement to include the civil society. Also, I know that civil society, they have their own regional grouping, which could be maybe engaged. Also, we have various what they call multilateral banks. I'm sure they will be available to attend this particular meeting. And then once you engage, particularly for the African region, I'm saying so because it's very close to me. Not that I'm not sensitive to the other regions. The African region, you should be assured that the whole African group will be at the meeting attending the Africa Climate Week. They intend to host the African group meeting there. So within the framework of your programming, you could see how you could engage some of these sub-regional groups within the African group to ensure that you have a broader perspective in terms of stakeholders. On the second point, I know that the results or maybe the engagement of the different stakeholders at these climate weeks is actually very intensive. What I would do want to see is to ensure that maybe you dedicate a session at Fifth Capacity Building Hub just to present these outcomes from all the regional climate week, particularly those that will happen before the COP. So maybe you need to have just a dedicated session for that to ensure that maybe you present what are the results and how these solutions, and arising from that, I'm sure that maybe some of the negotiators will be present attending the Fifth Capacity Building Hub, might pick one or two issues which they can use for negotiations. So that is what I would propose at the moment. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Richard, for mentioning, and of course, we have to get have to take advantage of the climate summit that you have mentioned, and we take note of the outcomes will be important, as you mentioned, of these regional climate weeks. Does anybody else want to take the floor? Ms. Deb, please go ahead.
I was also thinking, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was thinking about the second question about the regional meetings and how best to engage those findings at the global level. I'm wondering about having a couple high-level sessions where we're bringing different regional conversations together with political or global leaders in that context. So whether that is the UN officials, or if that's particular global leaders from those different regions into conversations, it might be helpful to have that type of draw or press or kind of high-level conversation, country party level conversation. And it would be lovely to do it across the different regions, so to have all the regions represented in a sort of round circle conversation. That'd be lovely.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. Very important what you just mentioned, and we take note of that. Is anybody else? I don't see anybody else asking for the floor.
Yes.
Oh, hello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before getting into the idea of the regionals, I'd like to give you a bit of background. My name is Susan, and I represent the UPU, the Universal Postal Union, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations, and it's charged with the administration of the International Treaty on Postal Services, as well as assisting member countries with development cooperation, specifically for their postal services. And the UPU is expanding its capacity and ambition to drive rapid climate change throughout the sector. The global postal network operates over 680,000 permanent post offices and hundreds of thousands of vehicles. Leaders from 192 member countries of the UPU are due to decide on global emission reduction targets for the postal sector at an extraordinary Congress in Riyadh in October. In addition to investment in low-emission postal buildings and vehicles, which will have direct climate benefits, the postal community is exploring the potential to contribute to mitigation and adaptation efforts within the broader society. For example, through infrastructure sharing, climate services, and leveraging their visibility and interaction with millions of people every day. Examples of innovative operational models can be found in key adaptation areas such as energy, transport, water, agriculture, health, and disaster risk reduction. To mainstream these efforts, however, requires coordinated public policy at the cross-sectoral level, climate investment and capital building as enabling conditions. With those objectives in mind, the UPU is establishing a climate facility to provide systematic institutional support that will include a climate finance foundation and a knowledge hub. The PCCB meeting in these last couple of days has enriched my understanding of good practices in capacity building and priorities at the national level, as well as ongoing international cooperation. As a next step, we look forward to opportunities to enhance institutional collaboration between the UPU and the PCCB to raise awareness at the national government level, to have better engagement between climate ministries and postal authorities, and to identify the potential role of the postal network as capacity building partners, in particular for national adaptation efforts. Now, at the regional level, we also have what we call restricted unions, which are groups of different postal authorities. Sometimes it's ministries, sometimes it's regulators, but they all have in common their particular region and the specific needs of their region. And I believe this might be a good opportunity to explore the possibility of perhaps some of the regional restricted unions of the postal operators to join in perhaps with this as a first opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan, for your background notes. We are looking forward to finding ways to collaborate, and I know we have a bilateral tomorrow, and we can talk further regarding the climate facility and the knowledge hub that you just mentioned. Yes, Roberta.
Yeah, just want to add, and thank you very much for attending the PCCB meeting, for reaching out, because I think it's really what the implementation of the Paris Agreement is about, to have every sector, every activity that can seem like far from the UNFCCC space and this place, but thinking on how spread and wide is the postal service network. If, as you mentioned, like every office, every fleet would adopt the goals of the Paris Agreement, and this would be replicated in other activities, so we would get to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So thank you very much, and looking forward to discuss further how to collaborate.
Thank you, Roberta, for always enhancing our conversation. There you go. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. In terms of the stakeholders, it will be useful to connect and engage with city governments and coalitions which involve urban local bodies and other people working in the urban space, particularly because cities are at the center of climate action. So their perspectives in terms of the challenges that they face while implementing NAPs, or in terms of the opportunities that they have, can be leveraged. And for the second point, my suggestion is to have a World Cafe style format for discussion, where we take turns in discussing the findings and lessons probably from each of the regional workshops, and this can be then followed by a high level stakeholder meeting, which can then be concluded with discussions and more findings and lessons. Yeah, that'll be my contribution. Thank you.
No, thank you. The importance of, we already know the importance of cities, and as that was mentioned in the high level sessions, something we will think about. I'm sorry, can you repeat your name and your organization, please?
I'm Srinidhi. I'm from LSE and also representing Youngo today.
Okay. Did you get? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we have already had a rich discussion on this topic, and Kun-sang. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you very much. On the first guiding question, maybe this is something that Secretariat had already taken care of. We are aware of all the good work that's going around NAB write-up, workshop, and all those. So how that information and outcomes of findings fit into this one. So then it's not only about the support, but also about what is the state of play right now. How many countries, actually have completed the NAB development, how many submission, and who all in implementation stage. So then if that, the first guiding question is, if we are clear on that, then the who all should be there when it comes to the stakeholder, then we can get a balance on, as some of our colleagues are saying, the national, the member states who are actually the custodian of NAB's implementation, and then other stakeholder, regional, international, national, who support, facilitate, work together with national in fulfilling that outcome. So I see that process as a circular one, and then we have to connect. So I feel that first question, the guiding question, is where we really need to get that input correct. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah, great reflection, Kun-sang. Thank you very much. With that said, I would like to invite our meeting observers to send us any further comments on this sub-item via our in-meeting survey on SurveyMonkey as soon as possible, so that the committee can react to them either later in the meeting, if there's time, or after the meeting. The link to the survey, again, is projected on the screen. So we are now going to the organization of the 5th Capacity Building Hub, and I would like to invite the committee to turn part on the part 5 of the sub-item 4C on the organization of the 5th Capacity Building Hub. Please refer to the background document, PCCB/2023/8. And one of the flagship activities of the PCCB is the Capacity Building Hub, a series of capacity building related sessions that focus on different themes, typically over the course of a week in conjunction with sessions of the COP. The PCCB is invited to consider the background note containing the draft concept note for the 5th Capacity Building Hub at COP28 and agree on the next steps with regard to the planning and organization of the hub. The tentative dates for the opening and closing the call of expressions of interest are the 1st of September of 2023 and the 15th of September of 2023 as well, respectively. The PCCB welcomes all interested stakeholders to make their submission to the call. Last year, 5 external experts on cross-cutting issues joined the Hub Steering Committee to advise on the mainstreaming of cross-cutting issues across the Hub program. The PCCB would like to express its deep gratitude to the experts who assisted through their engagement and advice. Ms. Agnes Mirembe, expert on gender responsiveness; Benjamin Schachter, expert on human rights; Rita Spadafora, expert on indigenous peoples' knowledge; Maria Cecilia Coaglino is expert on the role of youth; and Ms. Deb Morrison, expert on action for climate empowerment. And now that we have her, I think we only have her here, so thank you. This year, the committee could also consider inviting new external experts on cross-cutting issues to join the 5th Hub Steering Committee. The 5th Capacity Building Hub is planned as an in-person mandated event at COP28 in Dubai. Regardless of the one-person nature of this year's hub, online interactions with off-site audiences and or speakers and innovative forms of capacity building through visual and digital media will be greatly encouraged, as opposed to long classroom-style presentations. In an effort to further enhance synergies between its own activities and events hosted by other fora at COP28, the committee could consider collaborating with the COP presidency through the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action on climate action events. So moving on to the thematic days. According to activity C.1.2 in the PCCB Work Plan 2021-2024, one of the thematic days at the 5th Capacity Building Hub will be dedicated to the 2023 focus area of the PCCB on capacity building support for adaptation, with a focus on addressing gaps and needs related to formulating and implementing NAPs. As regards the remaining 5 thematic days at the 4th Capacity Building Hub, the PCCB may wish to consider the following options. Effective Capacity Building Day. The central topic could be on effectiveness of capacity building. Capacities Day, learning and transforming our cities. This could focus on capacity building needs and gaps, as well as solutions and support at the city level, including sub-themes such as transformative urban coalitions, city-level climate finance, and the climate action pathways, looking at urbanization and multi-level collaboration. The Private Finance Capacities Day, it could explore experience, good practices, and lessons learned related to capacity building in the context of mobilizing and scaling up private climate finance. South-South Capacity Building Day, it could explore challenges and share good practices in relation to capacity building efforts for climate action under the framework of South-South cooperation. And Capacities for Rights-Based Climate Action Day could explore challenges and share good practices in relation to capacity building for integration, rights-based approaches, including inclusivity and just transition into climate decision making. So with that said, I would like now to invite my fellow PCCB members and observers to a plenary discussion on the organization of this 5th Capacity Building Hub. On the screen, you see the guiding questions for our discussion, but please feel free to ask any further questions and raise any other issues. The first guiding question is, discuss the proposed options and agree upon the thematic days for the 5th Capacity Building Hub. I now open the floor, first to the PCCB members and then also to our meeting observers. And on the screen, you will see the thematic days presented for our discussion. So the floor is open.
If no one goes, I go.
Oh, yeah. Roberta, please, go ahead.
I don't want to be always the first speaking, but if it is useful to break the ice. No, thank you. Thank you very much, Rosibel. And, I think we already mentioned already yesterday that also the capacity building hub has proven so far to be a very effective, useful activity of the PCCB. Creating a space at COPs for practitioners, parties, where to meet, learn, exchange experiences. And it has been more and more successful every year, I would say, because it's now getting more known, and so more people is coming. And I would suggest to use the same approach as before, to have working group 3 on communication and raise awareness, to enhance the establishment of the steering committee, and and would welcome the what you mentioned, the call for expression of interest for cross-cutting topic to be represented. We had already youth and gender represented in the steering committee, so would encourage to follow the same approach. And with reference to the thematic days, I think they are very nice, the options presented. And well, nevertheless, I would keep it still open, the possibility to receive inputs on different titles for the thematic days. Yes, I think this is it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Still some of the members would like to take the floor? Well, if not, the floor is open to observers who want to comment on the proposed days, thematic days. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Anbar from the Women and Gender constituency. I first would like to extend my congratulations and my thanks for the organization of this capacity building hub. Last year, we were able to propose a side event on transformative pathways that was presenting the specific benefits of having a gender-responsive, human rights-based approach to climate action. And it was very successful. And so indeed, I think the PCCB Capacity Building Hub presents a wonderful opportunity for parties to interact with other stakeholders and to explore innovative and inclusive ways of looking at climate actions and raising ambition for climate action. On the proposed thematic that you have here, I congratulate you for choosing the capacities for rights-based climate action. I imagine that can come also from the success of this training that you have done online on human rights and climate. And so I just can only congratulate and ensure that we will raise awareness on that within the Women and Gender constituency and other observers to make sure that there are good proposals for this day. And also regarding the private finance capacities days, I would encourage to also explore not only good practices and lessons learned, but maybe lessons learned relating to safeguards in terms of engaging with private finance, both social and environmental safeguards, and how this can guide to have and to continue to have a rights-based and an inclusive climate action funded with private finance. That's what I see at the moment. Yeah, and cities, I think that also brings a lot of great opportunities for inclusive climate action. So I can think of many examples of actions that have been led by the Women and Gender constituency for gender-responsive urban planning, for example. So we'll make sure that we have good proposals there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Please go ahead in the back. Can you please say your name?
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Tarina Mtasa from the government of Zimbabwe. I happen to also interested in capacity building and action for climate empowerment. I'm happy that at least this year you are focusing on NAPs, on national adaptation planning, national adaptation plans, and all. That's a noble idea, and I'm also happy that at least I saw that you are also be discussing issues to do with financing those NAPs as a country, as a region, as Africa. Obviously, you know that we have many developing nations, and we really need these finances to implement our NAPs. In most countries, have finalized their NAPs. For instance, in Zimbabwe, we finalized our NAP. We are only waiting communicating it to the UNFCCC so that it's uploaded on the NAP websites. I'm just looking at the thematic areas for last year and the thematic areas for this year. My recommendation, I don't know how we are going to take it. I was thinking that since you are focusing on national adaptation planning for this year, which is your theme focus area, why don't we have something to do with maybe one of the thematic days focusing on national adaptation plans? How effective can we implement those national adaptation plans, the financial sources, a lot of things, maybe best practices from those who are implementing the NAPs and all. I don't know. It's just my recommendation. I don't know how you are going to take it. Because for looking at the last year's thematic days and also this year's thematic days, yes, there is some synergies. For instance, the first one, capacity building, effective capacity building day. Last year it was there, and last year we're focusing on implementing Articles 6 and 13 of the Paris Agreement and also issues to do with just transition. So now, since this year you are focusing on NAPs, let's also try to also have something to do with adaptation as one of the thematic days. Over.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, the effective capacity building day would be on the focus area okay, there will be the focus area day with addressing adaptation and NAPs in particular as the focus, like the focus area of the PCCB for 2023. So there will be this specific day dedicated.
Go ahead. Thank you, Roberta.
Sorry if I may just add a clarification. So there's a fixed capacity building hub day, which is the PCCB focus area day. So that's a standing day for the PCCB hub. And in the case of this year, the focus area is adaptation and NAPs. So there will be the entire day dedicated to that. And these are the additional 5 days. So the capacity building hub runs for 6 days. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the clarification. Greg?
Yes, Greg Walker from Mediators Beyond Borders. I have a bias, I must admit, that last year MBBI partnered with PCCB to do Open Space Learning Day. I'll ask others to reflect on it, but my experience, even though I caught COVID during it, and my partner Christine facilitated the day, I thought it was a good innovation in the Capacity Building Hub, and my sense was that the organizations that participated found value in the day. So I would encourage you again to support innovation, innovative practices for interaction, active learning, and certainly Open Space Learning Day. I would hope perhaps we would do that a second time, given the lessons we learned from the first time. So I'll put in my word for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, and definitely we will look on how to have open space across the days. Thank you. Cecile, please.
Yes, Cecile again from Germany. I would like to first echo Greg's point. I think that it's definitely very important to have innovative formats, especially given that, as we know, a COP is a very intense experience, and people get, I think, quite tired of the classic formats of side events and panel discussions. My other point that I wanted to make is about the private finance capacity days. I think it's a very, very relevant point and topic as well to be discussed. And I think it would be interesting to think about how we can also have private companies join that day in particular, but of course the capacity building hub throughout the whole 6 days. But in particular on that day, I think it would be really interesting to hear from some of the companies that have already been able to fund some very concrete capacity building activities, or maybe companies that want to but are facing some challenges as well. Thank you.
floor.
Thank you. Just to complement, you were mentioning before also the possibility to engage with the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action and the Champion. So I think it can be combined, being about initiatives and private sector. So definitely good idea. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Cecile. Deb? Go ahead. Yes, Deb.
Deb Morrison, University of Washington. So I think the one worry that I have about COP coming up this year is that I heard the education pavilion will be in the green zone instead of in the blue zone. And because the capacity hub is in the blue zone, I'm wondering about the ability for the capacity hub. I think it might be in the effective capacity building day strand and from the description that's in the report here. But I'm wondering about adding into that effective capacity building something about knowledge mobilization, because that's the question I'm getting asked a lot this year is how do we actually mobilize knowledge either through schools, through communication practices, and that's sort of woven into the effective capacity building component, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Well taken. Somebody else wants to take the floor, or we continue to? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Rosibel. Maybe since the discussion seems to be exhausted, maybe just to highlight something that feedback we received from last year's Capacity Building Hub and previous hub about the possibility of having interpretation in some of the events of the Capacity Building Hub. Some of the event proponents have brought their own interpretation, and that, for example, when bringing perspectives of, for example, indigenous peoples that don't have the language skills. So maybe it's an invitation also to members of the PCCB network and other potential partners, how they could maybe help facilitate that. Now the technology has evolved in a way that booths are not required as before, or the more remote technologies, but that's a feedback we have received from participants in the Capacity Building Hub. So just an invitation, and we have seen that through the PCCB network, for example, members have been very generous in translating some of the PCCB documents, like the toolkit and other technical papers. So maybe also for the Capacity Building Hub, some partners could come and assist in that. Just wanted to highlight that. And also going back to the issue of promotion, maybe to our active observers in the room, also how to help promote the Capacity Building Hub, because it is of course well attended, but I think the more the merrier, let's say. So just wanted to put that on the floor.
If I may, thank you very much, Alejandro, and also anything we can do also to assist the Secretariat in the exchanges during the organization, the logistic organization of the COP, to have the Capacity Building Hub placed in a convenient space, like here, for example, was close to the entrance in one of the main areas, so was very well positioned. Thank you.
Lily, I can see Lily. Thank you, Roberta, but I can see Lily.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And it was helpful to hear observers' feedback on the different topics proposed and other recommendations for it. I was also just pleased to remember that the Capacity Building Hub is a hybrid space, and that this concept note is quite thorough. And I know later this afternoon we're discussing communications and outreach, and there is a section on it in this concept note, but it might be good to consider the Capacity Building Hub explicitly when we get to that section this afternoon.
That's a great recommendation, Lily. Thank you. I see Deb again. Deb?
Yes, sorry for taking up the space.
That's okay. Go ahead.
But maybe just to follow up on one thing that Alejandro just said, perhaps it might be helpful as you designate or solicit hosts for the hubs to name the language component, because it might be helpful to have hosts that have partnerships that are multilingual, and that would help potentially to manage the translation problem.
Thank you, Deb. Point well taken. Okay, in the back, please.
Okay, thank you very much again for this opportunity. I am not sure of the time we are going to call for expressions from 1 September to 15 September. Is it not a short time? And like last year, you opened, I think, from 1 up to the 23rd of September. Why don't we flight maybe the call a bit earlier, so at least those who want to participate can be able to apply? Over.
The secretariat, we think the secretariat is telling us that if we have more days, or a spectrum of more days, if we have too many submissions to go through. I think 2 weeks, we believe 2 weeks time gives plenty of 15 days to have, if they're intended to submit, then we would have enough submissions to work with and be presented. Thank you. Anne, again.
Yeah, I think that was a very good point on the timeline, and I know you might have planned the things already, but our experience is that if we wait until beginning of September for submissions, by the time you come back to us to confirm whether the event is accepted, it leaves very little time to organize it, logistically speaking, especially if you have speakers that need a visa, need to arrange their travel, etc. So I was really wondering if maybe having the call earlier would be a possibility for you.
Yes. Thanks for that understanding, Anne. You were saying something about
yes, no, we took this into consideration, and considering this year will be in December, we were hoping that this would give more time also, because so anticipating then there would be like the August issue, which in many countries is there are also the regional climate week, but and the summer break. So we thought being in December, the COP having the call for interest on the 1st of September would leave time enough for selected organization to arrange their travels. And and we'll make sure that they will be also promoted so that everyone will be aware and can submit on time.
Yes. Okay, so Kaya, see.
And there was the guy behind Anne from Korea, I think. Korea.
Yes, go ahead, please. So sorry, I always get confused. Kaya first, and then back to you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a clarifying question. Typically, how long does it take for the steering committee to review these submissions? Because I think if we can convince the observers and participants that we will be efficient, then that will help to ease their worries about the visa and organization and things like that.
Well, we're saying about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, maybe just to consider colleagues the numbers last time, because the numbers are quite impressive in terms. I think last year was over 200 applications, if I remember correctly. 300. Yes. So that gives you an idea of how long it takes, because I mean our team in the secretariat does a pre-filtering, because there's a series of criteria, because I mean we could not run it through the steering committee, the 300, of course. So I mean we could if you wish, but I think that's not very efficient. So it does require a bit of time between that pre-filtering and then the actual deliberations of the committee.
Thank you, Kaya and Alejandro. Okay, now back to you.
My name is Jae Hyun Nam from South Korea. Um, so I would like to suggest one theme for the fifth capacity building hub. So recently, the mountain and forest fires due to climate change are increasing, and in Korea, the Australia and United States, etc. So, therefore, I would like to propose like the plan to respond to forest fires, like yeah, at the fifth capacity building, the hub as a theme. Is it okay? Well, I don't know. It's just, I can suggest I can suggest the theme for it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it is very important that the forest fires are in your country as well, US, Canada. But it's a very specific, like for a thematic day, but we can arrange like a panel discussion regarding that, and then you can contact us later and we can talk about it. Thank you. So I guess we can now move on to the second open plenary discussion and to the next guiding questions. In light of the thematic days agreed upon, which stakeholders could the PCCB engage with? And building on the successes of innovative modalities of sessions featured at the previous hubs, such as the open space design photo exhibition, what modalities could the fifth capacity building hub strive to promote? And please, I now open the floor first to the PCCB members, and then we'll go back to observers. Thank you. Lily, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thinking about stakeholders to engage and those who can maybe present on during the different days, and for example, in the private sector capacity building day, it would be really useful to have things spamming the whole kind of process and chain. So you would have like investors, but then also the project developers and also the implementers and practitioners would be useful. And in terms of modalities, I don't have anything in particular, but I was just very impressed with the wide-ranging examples provided in the concept note.
Thank you, Lily. The members want to react? So I can give the floor to observers if no members are. So I'll open the floor to observers if you want to comment on this. And go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Co-Chair. So yeah, as I explained, the women and gender constituency members were very happy to apply and propose some events, also with innovative modalities of sessions. So I think it is particularly important for the PCCB to engage with stakeholders such as observers of the women and gender constituency, the indigenous peoples constituency, youth constituency, and also all stakeholders that represent, I would say, people from the local communities that are in need of this capacity building in the process of implementing the Paris Agreement, but that can also showcase what is happening and which type of actions they are putting in place. So.
Thank you. And I was present at the fourth capacity building hub, and I'm sure, and as a leader working group 2 on cross-cutting issues, I'm sure that there was a lot of very balanced participation of all the stakeholders, women, indigenous people that you were mentioning. But thank you. We'll consider, of course, this again. I knew Greg was going to take the floor. Go ahead.
There we go. First of all, I applaud the PCCB for the innovative list of modalities in the concept note. There are a lot of very exciting kinds of things there. I would encourage, as you already have recognized, encourage people when they do submissions that they think innovatively about how to make this active learning, not passive learning, but active learning, highly participatory. I've been at all of the hubs over the years, and there have been some excellent events at the hubs, but sometimes I feel like I'm in another side event. And I think to communicate to the submitters that we respect the side event process, and they really need to think, is what they are proposing better proposed as a side event, because the expectation is that the PCCB wants this to be a peer learning opportunity, regardless of the theme or the particular submission. I would simply emphasize that because I know that's one of the things that we've all enjoyed, just like we enjoyed the breakout sessions yesterday as part of our first day of the PCCB meeting. So again, I applaud you for what's in the concept note, the innovative ideas. Encourage that. Maybe that becomes one of the factors you consider when you evaluate the submissions. And I'm seeing some head nods. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Greg. Do you have somebody else? Okay. Marisha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I think I'm going to borrow a little bit of the craziness from Dr. Greg, if he doesn't mind. But a thought just came to me as I looked at all the innovative ideas for how we can, modalities for organizing the activities. And I am cognizant of the issues raised about things like connectivity. And so I wanted to throw out the idea of the possibility we have country offices in many countries across the world, for UN country offices that is, that we would probably consider an opportunity to open up the offices for a select number of persons to be able to join at that location to alleviate the aspect of connectivity and devices for access. So I just wanted to throw that slightly crazy idea out there and let it land where it may. Thank you.
Thank you, Carisha. That's a great idea that we're going to look further on. Anybody else on the floor? Yeah. Observers? Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yes, Yanko.
Thank you again, Chidinma, Yvonne, Iro. Just a bit more about the first guiding question. Again, we're retreating that it would be good to have a whole lot of private sectors joining in terms of the stakeholders, then a lot of the knowledge builders. So not just the universities, there are also some informal knowledge people who can participate. And also the policymakers, if they can really participate as much as possible. And we can now have some kind of sub-workshops that would encourage more inclusive knowledge share. Then in terms of being more innovative, it would be interesting to see how creativity can be promoted. So if you're saying open space designs, you could have themes in the open space design. So for instance, agriculture can have their own, and it's just to make people to be as creative as possible. And you can have stuff on energy, just make it make it as interesting so that there will be a lot of creativity brought up. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback on creativity. Okay. First Deb and then Cecile. Deb, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a thought about the networking, and maybe it's the anchor event too, and it connects to also how we think about promoting the Capacity Hub. So one of the things that could be done is we could take an anchor event early on, do lightning talks by the hosts, so that the hosts kind of overview each of the days that are going on at the hub, and then have potentially like small one-pager type posters by the presenters, so that people can kind of get a tasting, and we could get a funder and make it fun as like a, beverage and mingle kind of event. But that might allow people to start to key in on what the vast breadth of presentations is across, or events, not presentations, but activity across the hub. And it would make it really great for people to be able to mix from the different days. So something to really pull people into the hub as a communication tool.
And thank you, Deb. Now, Cecile?
Yes, thank you very much. I just had a thought because I know that at the Durban Forum, many of the adaptation colleagues wanted to participate, but they couldn't because of competing negotiation agendas related to adaptation. And so my suggestion here would be to have something similar like we had at the GST roundtables, where we had these creative note takers who developed the kind of summary posters, I will call them, of each of the sessions. And so if you are double booked and you are missing out on one of the sessions at the Capacity Building Hub that you really wanted to attend and that is actually really relevant to your work, that you could come back to it and have a look at what was discussed on the poster. Thanks.
Thank you very much for all your great ideas. I would say they're great. They're not crazy. They're just great. So thank you very much for that. And I think going back to the feedback we received from last year's hub, I think something that really was very much welcome was the innovative events. For example, there were theater presentations. There were a series of modalities that were very well received by participants. So maybe we could be more explicit in the criteria when for the selection about this in terms of the modalities as a part of the criteria assessment, and maybe the way we also label the call for expansions. We're not calling for events at the Capacity Building Hub, rather activities. So maybe that's something that could also work. It goes back to Greg's point that in the past, unfortunately, we have seen that maybe some organizations have thought that the Capacity Building Hub would be a good way to slot in their side event based on saturation in the formal side events. So the intention is that the Capacity Building Hub is more of a space, as mentioned, peer-to-peer learning or exchange of experiences rather than just an alternative to side events. So maybe we can make that emphasis. On Cecile's point, that's a great idea. It does have some cost implications, high cost implications, I have to say. But maybe that's something, again, that maybe through the networks, the partners could be something to think about, because it's very good to have these visual reports. In terms of connectivity, I think that's a good point for more participants at the hub. The hub, anyway, will be webcasted, so it's always webcasted. We don't have possibly the facilities of have it interactive, so online participants to interact, because also it has cost implications and requires additional technical capacities, but definitely it's webcasted. And it goes back to the modalities that maybe we try to ensure that we're not having so many people connected online if not necessary, because then it becomes a traditional event, and I think defeats the purpose of that in-person interaction. Unfortunately, not everyone can be at the CUP, but whoever can be on the CUP, how can they better interact? So thank you very much.
Thank you for all the clarifications and inputs, Alejandro. Well taken. If there's nobody that taking the floor, okay, Ms. Her from Philippines.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Of course, gender equality, integration, and social inclusion is very important for the participation of the people's organization, and of course the vulnerable groups. Hybrid mode for more inclusive participation, particularly, of course, the local communities, and also the youth. Youth and the youth leaders. We could also engage local experts, scientists to cascade to subnational. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for your feedbacks. I don't see anybody requesting the floor. So now we're going to again invite our meeting observers to send us any further comments on this sub-item via our in-meeting survey on SurveyMonkey as soon as possible so the committee can react to them either later in the meeting if there is time or after the meeting. And there again you have the survey link projected on the screen. So now we're going to the last item for the discussion in today's meeting. In the agenda, item 5 on recommendations of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building to parties. The related background document is PCCB/2023/5. We've have had the first part of the discussion yesterday focus on our recommendations related to coherence and coordination of capacity building and capacity building ownership. Today's second session concludes this agenda item. The PCCB is invited to consider the draft recommendations to parties. Sorry. Yes. The PCCB is invited to consider draft recommendations to parties for consideration by COP28 and CMA5 contained in the annex of the background document, and to collect inputs and feedback from observers at the 7th meeting of the PCCB. At the end of this session, the PCCB will also be invited to agree on the next steps with regard to finalizing the recommendations. For the benefit of the participants not here yesterday, I will share again some background information on the PCCB recommendations to parties, but also refer you to the background document PCCB/2023/5, where you can find all relevant information. The COP and CMA mandated the PCCB to provide recommendations to parties across several of our work areas. So for areas of recommendation, according to our 2021-2024 work plan, the PCCB is to provide recommendations to the COP and or the CMA as appropriate under subactivities A.2, B.3.2, and C.2 on the following topics. A, improving coherence and coordination of capacity building and duplicating efforts. B, enhancing developing country ownership of building and maintaining capacity. And C, enhancing the sharing of good practices, experience, and lessons learned related to capacity building among relevant bodies under and outside the Convention of the Paris Agreement. And D, identifying potential areas of collaboratory work with bodies whose work is relevant to the PCCB in its work plan. And E, determine how information from the Durban Forum can be utilized by bodies under and outside the Convention. Draft recommendations on Area A, B, and C have been prepared as an input to this meeting based on available information from activities completed by the PCCB and are included in the annex of the background document. Recommendations of Areas D and E will be prepared after the 7th meeting of the PCCB as they are dependent on the outcomes of the 12th Durban Forum and the 5th meeting of the ICG respectively, which have been held in conjunction with SBI 58. Yesterday, we have already discussed the draft recommendations for Areas A and B. And having providing this information, we will now be starting 2 parallel breakout group discussions. Group 1 will consider and discuss the draft recommendations prepared on Area C, enhancing the sharing of good practices, experiences, and lessons learned. And Group 2 will discuss how the PCCB can enhance the reach and impact of our recommendations to parties, especially at the regional, national, and subnational level. Group 1 can stay like yesterday, the dynamics on this side of the room, and Group 2 will be asked to move further in the back. And after 20 minutes, everyone will switch again, like yesterday, to the other group, so that all members and observers have taken part in both of the discussions. The facilitators of each group will then present the discussion outcomes briefly in plenary. And I now like to ask to everyone to join one of the 2 groups, and the Secretariat will announce when it is time to switch. If we could form 2 groups, please, and have similar numbers
in like the dynamics we did yesterday. Thank you. Before moving on, I would like to see if our PCCB member Yusuf, who is participating remotely, would like to share his views on the two sets of draft recommendations and on report back to that he was able to follow online. I don't know, is that maybe? No, he wasn't. He's not. I don't know if. No. Okay. So that's okay. So Nick, we can go to the breakout groups. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for participating in these breakout groups. They were very rich. My group in particular, as you know, looked at one set of the recommendations, draft recommendations that the PCCB is delivering to parties later this year. And the topic was ensuring the sharing of good practices, experiences, and lessons learned related to capacity building. So we had a lot of ideas from you all. Some of them talked about how to make some of these more concise or to differentiate a couple of the recommendations. We had good ideas that pointed out that we needed to add references to the local, regional, and national levels, and in addition to ACE, youth, Indigenous people's knowledge, and non-state actors. We also talked about wanting to kind of add a recommendation about how to expand the tent for capacity builders, because you have the explicit people who build capacity building, who do capacity building, but those who may not realize that they're part of this community, or, you know, doing professional learning for those who are newer to the capacity building space. And then lastly, there was also a discussion in both groups about how to map and differentiate and provide case studies and to document best practices in sharing, and how that in and of itself will enhance the sharing of experiences and good practices. So thank you all for the many good ideas on this front and the response and feedback to these draft recommendations.
Thank you very much. So my group, group 2, basically addressed on how can the PCCB enhance the reach and impacts of its recommendation to parties, especially at the regional, national, and subnational level. So as Lily was mentioning, we had rich discussion. You know, we had to cut short some of them. Sorry about that. And we had also a lot of innovative idea, very, very impressive. So some of the ideas are the linking of PCCB to ACE and UNFCCC focal point, because they feel they're the entry point, and however, they also strong feeling about need to strengthen the capacity of the focal point themselves, and also to provide with resources that's required. And also at the group also acknowledged that there's a need to how do we target in order to reach the grassroots level who are implementing those recommendations, right? So suggested on reaching out through constituencies, so we can go at the sub-national level, and also identify target audience of specific recommendation. But there was suggestion as to how to repackage the recommendation so that we can articulate well to the targeted audience. The role of university partnership was felt very important by the group, and also when the recommendations are being outreach or disseminated, the need to attach the resource component to make it convincing, and there the role of PCCB network was something that the group felt useful. There were also concerns around PCCB not going on the ground, and we had the Secretariat clarifying on mandates, you know, why and PCCB cannot be on the ground, and of course they were feeling that, oh, maybe when the next review of the PCCB happens, this is something that can be discussed among the members, and then so a lot of recommendation around how the important role of the focal point and PCCB. How can PCCB member be the kind of ambassador of the PCCB itself in their own constituencies? Were discussed, and then there were various avenues and means and medium as to reach to the audiences, both at national, sub-level, and regional level, through webinar, the podcast, and so we had really rich discussion, And there was also mention of how to kind of liaise with the partner channels. Sorry, that was found very useful, because when you use your own channel, then the same member or participant actually get attending. So if you reach out to partner channel, then you widen your network. So that was also very useful suggestion. So you can imagine the richness of the discussion that we had, and some very innovative, and the learning from yesterday's movie, since it has a subtitle, it was more conducive to your eyes. You felt like you understood more. So these are ways and means to outreach and widen the network. And also there were discussion around since outreach is very important component of PCCB work, maybe in the PCCB network member we should invite media, so that the outreach is strengthened or taken to a wider wider stakeholder, and the looking for influencer when you articulate or send out the message on the recommendation. Look for champions at national level, regional level, and even champions among the practitioners themselves, so because they can speak to each other better. So these are the ideas that came about. And some felt that there is a need for a toolkit for the practitioners to gather and communicate their knowledge. So this was one idea. And the last one is the one-pager in order to communicate PCCB, because people really don't have time go through the whole recommendation. So it's really about articulating and making conducive to eyes again. So it's all in presentation, right? So of course we are aware that there was a flyer that Secretariat and PCCB worked on for last recommendation. So maybe build on that and how to make it more targeted. So these are the discussions that we had. So the discussion was so rich, summarizing in just is not possible. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lily and Konsang and everybody for this rich discussion and inputs for this session. So we're now moving on to actions or next steps. I would now like the PCCB to turn again to background document PCCB/2023/5 and invite the committee to agree on next steps with regard to finalizing the recommendations. The PCCB may wish to consider the following proposed next steps with regard to its recommendation to parties. A would be finalize the recommendations intersessionally based on 1, the input and feedback received from members and observers at the 7th meeting of the PCCB. 2, outcomes of the 12th Durban Forum on Capacity Building and related discussions at the 7th meeting of the PCCB. And lastly, on this one, outcomes of the 5th meeting of the Informal Coordination Group for Capacity Building under the Convention and the Paris Agreement, ICG. And B, include the finalized recommendations in its annual technical progress report for 2023 in line with the practice of previous year. I now open the floor first to PCCB members and then also to our meeting observers. Thank you.
I go. Okay. Thank you very much, Rosibel. And no, so I think absolutely we could follow the suggested next steps. So to finalize intersessionally the recommendations, as we received several very useful inputs, and also there will be the integration of the outcomes of the Durban forums and the outcomes of the 5th Informal Coordination Group meeting, so that we will then be able to fit the recommendations into the annual technical progress report. Thank you.
Thank you again, Roberta. Yes, Lily, I'm sorry. Yes, your flag.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Yes, I agree with Roberta that we have some good next steps that are proposed on the slides that I agree that we should follow. I just wanted to thank everybody again for their participation today and all of their good feedback on the recommendations. And I found that at least in my discussion groups, we also had feedback on the PCCB in a larger context. And so those will certainly be taken into consideration at our intersessional meetings as well.
Thank you, Lily. Heido, please.
Thank you very much, Rosabel. I just want to reconfirm that I totally agree with my colleagues. We need to take a look at the recommendations that we are going to get from Durban Forum and from ICG, and informed by those outcomes as PCCB members, we can further reflect on the recommendations and work intersessionally as you recommend. Thank you. I think this is a great way forward to this regard.
Thank you very much. So, if members are not yet ready to take the floor, I can open the floor to observers. What are your views on these next steps? Proposed next steps. Okay. Please, Karishika, go ahead.
Thank you, Rosabel. I'm only taking the floor to agree with colleagues that have already spoken, PCCB members. I think the recommendations provided are very comprehensive, and I think we can move forward with these next steps. So I just want to endorse what has already been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Karishi, again. Well, I don't see any more flags. I would then think that we all agree that we would need these recommendations, the Durban Forum, the ICG, of these next steps in order to go ahead to finalizing the recommendations. So I thank you. And of course, again, we would like invite meeting observers to send us any further comments via our SurveyMonkey as soon as possible, whenever you can, in or after the meeting. And the link is again provided in the next. Yes, but there you have had it like a lot. So there you go again. So today, my co-chair and I sincerely thank you all for very useful interventions, rich discussions we have learned from each other. I think this is what it is something that the PCCB does best, and I wish you a very nice evening. And tomorrow we will convene again at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I invite meeting observers to join us. I'm sorry, PCCB members will reconvene for the closed session, and at 10 a.m. we invite observers to join us when we will officially reconvene for the final day of the PCCB 7. So with this, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your presence today and your participation.